My name's Ed Fletcher, and I'm recording this video on the occasion of my father's 75th birthday. Joseph Fletcher Jr., my father, grew up in a very different time and a different place than I did. My brothers and sister, we grew up in Orangevale, California, a suburban Sacramento suburb that was mostly white. My dad grew up in rural Louisiana in a little town outside of Winsboro. He made it his mission to remind us of where we came from, where he came from. And, you know, I don't know if all parents have a prime directive, but I felt like my father's prime directive was to make sure that we didn't get soft. And that would manifest itself in many ways, often with a story about how my grandfather and them lived in a little area, and they were sharecroppers. They picked cotton for a white man, and there were very few roads around where they lived, and one time my grandfather got on a horse with a gun with an intent to shoot the white sheriff. He didn't shoot the white sheriff, but you know, I think my dad tells that story just to remind us of the racial tension at the time, and that it was a very different time and a different place. My dad would occasionally say no to things that seemed to make no rational sense. Like you spend the night at a friend's house, day one, day two, and then day three, Dad says no. And you say, why? And he says, well, you've had enough fun. That was often his answer for a lot of things. You had enough fun. He would often criticize or chastise us if we didn't have our shoes on Saturday morning. You'd have your shoes off, kicking around watching cartoons, and he'd give us some line about how if we were attacked that we wouldn't be ready for war. My dad didn't fight in any wars, but he was always concerned that the Russians might come and we might need our shoes on for this combat. Well, I'll tell you, if the Russians did make it to Orangevale, that would be news, and hopefully I'd have my shoes on by the time they get here. Despite my grandfather's early death, the Fletchers can proudly say that all of the men and women of my father's generation went to college and graduated from college, and it's really a remarkable story. And in partly because of that, going to college has always been an assumption for my generation. It wasn't if you're going, but where you're going and what you're going to study when you get there. My dad wanted us all to be engineers. Didn't quite work out that way, but to his credit, he never rode us too hard about the choices we've made in our lives and have let us do our thing in the work world. My father was a disciplinarian, but he never beat us much. I don't know if modern families could get away with this, but he had a form of punishment with a nickname, and the nickname was Dr. Leather. I remember when my dad came to visit me in college. I was staying off campus at a friend's, and my friends were over and they met him, and one of my friends remarked afterwards, "Does your dad hate fun?" But that goes back to the prime directives. Make sure we don't get soft. There's a train tracks in between where I lived off campus and the front of campus. And back in the day before there was a bridge, students would often miss class because they were stuck by the train. And he would remind us about how they marched to get that bridge so that they could go to class. Not irrelevant information, but at the time it didn't really fit into the conversation. We were probably talking about toast or something, I don't know. It's not that my dad can't tell a story. It's just that they're too long, too many asides, with no clear meaning at the end. My dad may not have been a full-time fan of fun, but he did love to tell a joke or to kid people. And as remarkable as it sounds, eventually I've started taking after some of his joking ways and trying to fool people for the sake of fooling people. Having a disciplinarian as a dad isn't something you appreciate at the time, but it's best appreciated with years to reflect and to soak in the lessons. I'm happy that he kept us grounded, kept us the firm understanding that the South and the times that we lived in were turbulent and are turbulent, and that it's great to live in a neighborhood where everybody's your friend, but don't think that everybody everywhere is always your friend. Thanks, Dad, for giving me good lessons and teaching me how to take a joke and give a joke and tell a meandering story. Happy birthday, Dad.